Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JacinioTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another transfer talk video. I'm going to be updating you guys on all things Arsenal in this January transfer window. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and get in that chat box and let me know what you guys are thinking. Last time we spoke was before the Brighton game, and so many of you guys were correct. It was a big win, and even though I thought the game would be somewhere around 1-0, I would not have been able to dream that we would play that well, especially like in the first, let's say 50-55 minutes. We all kind of know that after that, it got a little bit sticky. Arteta, in a very early part of the game, switched out the fullbacks. Arsenal got quite complacent. It got a little bit nervy towards the end, but ultimately Arsenal were really, really good and clinical against a very difficult side that has done a number over a lot of our rivals this season and last season and us last season. So we go into the Newcastle game tomorrow, I think, with a lot of confidence. But looking at socials, I can tell that Newcastle fans are very confident that they're going to get something at the Emirates. So it's going to be a very difficult game. But moving forward, Arsenal are going to be active in this January transfer window, and that's mostly what we're going to discuss today. Ornstein has come out with an update regarding Joao Felix and the loan situation for him. Ben Jacobs was on the Football Terrace, and there's been several other outlets that have echoed the same thing about MUDRYK, that a second offer has gone in that is being considered. And then something else kind of under the surface that's been kind of going under the radar is Evan Ndika from Eintracht Frankfurt has maybe signed a pre-agreement with Arsenal to come at the end of the season for free. A left-sided center back, which is definitely a position that needs to be looked at. So we'll go through all of those. I'll get your guys' feelings and I'll give you guys mine. So yeah, let's see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Ify says, we took White off and we were exposed. Arteta will learn from it. Arol says, Happy New Year, Jess. Happy New Year to you as well. Diallo says, and Happy New Year, Jess. Happy New Year to you as well. A lot of you guys saying Happy New Year. It's a new year. It's the same me. Okay. No, hopefully I'll be a better person than I was, a better version of me this year. But yeah, we're getting on with this year and excited about Arsenal in 2023, to be honest. Hyphy says, glad to catch the live stream from the beginning finally and not towards the end. I'm happy you're here as well. Sketchy Van says, what up? It's an interesting name, Sketchy Van. So yeah, Happy New Year to all of you guys, and thank you guys so much for being here. So let's go ahead and jump in. So this is coming from David Ornstein. This was at 8:30 in the morning. So early this morning, he put out an exclusive around Atletico Madrid are ready to loan Joao Felix. Manchester United and Arsenal are the main contenders at present, both expressing a firm interest in 23-year-old forward Joao Felix at nowhere near the 21 million euro package Atletico currently want. 15 million euro fee plus 6 million euro wages for 6 months. So what it looks like is that Atletico want to, basically want a crazy deal for a 6-month loan. And they want whatever team that comes in for him to cover all of his wages plus an astronomical loan fee of 15 million, which if you guys know Arsenal, usually the loan fees are like 1 million, 2 million, something like that. 15 million is astronomical. And I get that Joao Felix is a generational talent. For me personally, I rate him quite highly, but that is outrageous. And so I'm not surprised that Manchester United and Arsenal, who have been offered the opportunity to loan Joao Felix, are setting the rules at a different level. I'm not sure what that level is, but Ornstein already kind of said this on NBC, that those terms would need to come down significantly for Arsenal to make this loan deal happen. So I do think that there is a good chance that Arsenal are very interested in Joao Felix. Gunnerblog like echoed some of the same things that David Ornstein had said, but also added on to that by saying that there are key members at Arsenal that feel like this is a really big opportunity and he would fit in perfectly with us. I do think that Joao Felix would fit in perfectly at Arsenal, not just because he's an astronomical talent, but because positionally he can play across the front three and as a number 10. And most of our players, we know Smith Rowe can kind of do it, Martinelli can do it, Gabriel Jesus can do it, Saka can do it. They can all play on the left, right, maybe even through the center. And the technical ability and the footballing IQ is up there to a certain level where they're almost like one brain. You know what I mean? And Felix is no different than that. So I think he'd be a good fit. I know that we need a traditional winger, but if you've seen Joao Felix play, no matter what position he plays in, he's good. You know, he can take a man on. He has the passing ability, the vision, the IQ. He can score goals. Like, he can do it all. And so he is somebody that I'm not surprised that Arsenal are quite interested in. It just is a matter if Atletico are willing to come down off of those terms. Mafia says Joao Felix could be our next Martin Odegaard. That was also in the article, was that Arsenal sees Joao Felix as an opportunity quite similar to Martin Odegaard, where you kind of try him out, see what he's like within the system, and then look to purchase in the summer if it works out. And we see what's happened with Odegaard. Odegaard, just like Joao Felix, is an astronomical talent that was being underutilized and maybe misused at another club, another big club. And so the difference between Odegaard and Joao Felix is the fee that Joao Felix moved from Benfica to Atletico for. That fee was over 100 million. And so that's why Atletico, they're not going to let Arsenal take Joao Felix on a small loan fee and then turn around and buy him for under 40 million pounds. They're going to want to get 3-digit figures for Joao Felix. That is not going to happen. I do not think Arsenal are going to pay 16 million in a loan fee and then turn around and spend 100 million euros on him in the summer. Something would need to be worked out, especially because he hasn't really, you could argue that he's flopped, even though he's such a good talent, if that makes sense. You could say that he's flopped. And so I do think that I could see Arsenal being like, maybe not, but don't get it twisted. He could very well be another Martin Odegaard for us. Matt G says, Arsenal has become a club where young talent can thrive. Felix should want to join this team. One of the things that I did read about Felix is that it's not just about like who can pay his wages. It's about the best possible project. And I do think on paper, Arsenal have the best project for young players. Like, you do come to Arsenal and our young players tend to thrive. We're at the top of the Premier League. We don't look like stopping anytime soon. The owners are backing the manager. We have a very, kind of like our shit is together. Do you know what I mean? So the club is all singing from the same hymn sheet and we're going in the right direction. Whereas you can look at some of the other projects around, like especially in the Premier League, Chelsea could definitely pay him, but can you look at their project and say that they're moving in the right direction? Right now, they look like they're kind of just spinning their wheels a little bit. And then you look at somewhere like Manchester United, which is the other option for him. And even though I do think that there's a more obvious spot for him to play with Ronaldo leaving to go to Saudi Arabia, their project is not where ours is. And I know that they do exist within the top 4 at the moment, but they don't have a guaranteed Champions League level spot. And is Joao Felix going to want to leave Atletico Madrid? Because I don't think he's the type of player that's going to play in the Europa League. I think he wants to play for a team that's guaranteed Champions League, and we're pretty much guaranteed at this point, whereas Manchester United could still be in the Europa League next season. And their project is kind of at the beginning of its process. So I do think that he would probably look at Arsenal and say, this looks like a team that is going in the right direction and it's a stable environment for me to grow and become the player that he's supposed to be. Let's see. Badir says Joao Felix would be great up top. NT says if Portugal has Odegaard, they could have won if Portugal has Odegaard, they could have won the World Cup. I don't know if Portugal's issue was not having like a creative midfielder. I think they have enough creative. I mean, they have Bernardo Silva, they have Bruno Fernandes, they have Joao Felix, they have a bunch of creative players. I think the way Santos played doesn't really suit them. And then they just, I don't know, they just never really seem to. I don't know if it's a quality deficit or of a creativity deficit with them. I just feel like they just Santos just, I don't know. So, but I hear what you're saying. Prince Tutu says, I don't see this deal happening unless Atletico compromise and come way down. I agree. And that's pretty much what Ornstein and other people in and around this deal have echoed already. Stuart says, unless we get Felix on a loan, I see us only going for MUDRYK this window if we don't manage to get the fee down. James says, Jess, do you think, Joao Felix would choose Arsenal over United despite the money he could get there? Yes, I do think that he would choose Arsenal over Arsenal over United because of where our project is. You're pretty much guaranteed Champions League at this point, and it's a place where young players thrive, and our players come in and kind of hit the ground running. They tend to, everything fits in the right spot and everything kind of works. And I think that the last thing Joao Felix wants to do is go somewhere and him not fit the system or things not quite work out, because he's already wasted enough time as it is. And so Arsenal, it would be obvious what his role would be. For me, it feels like obvious what his role would be. He would be a player that could play across the front three and would offer a different sort of profile to the players that we already have. I know that seems problematic for some Arsenal fans, that the players that we're looking at are not really backup quality. And what I mean by that is they're not El Nenis, they're not Reece Nelsons, they're not Marquinhos, players that are obviously backups. They're not Sambis. They're not obvious backups to the players that we have, which begs the question, who sits out? I don't think that's what we need to worry about. Something that I think Pep, and obviously they're on a different stratosphere in terms of what they can spend, but something that they do quite well is that they play a certain group of players at the beginning of the season, and they almost save players for the back end so that they can continue to keep the same level of quality and energy and stuff like that at the back end of the season. And I think that's something that Arsenal fans need to kind of expand their minds to or get used to, is that there are going to be players that we love to death that are world-class quality, that we just love to watch them play, that will not always start every single game. And that's not a big deal. It's not death. I think when you have Champions League football, you can convince players that it's okay not to be a starter right now, or that they have a role that is important, even if it's not always in the Premier League starting every single game, because Champions League is super important. And so it's not necessarily the same as having like a Europa League backup squad, where it's like these games are like almost beneath some of the players that we have, if that makes sense. So I'm not worried about bringing in a player like Joao Felix that is on a level that is at the same level as the players that we already have, and them having to fight for their position. That's even Jesus as well. Like Joao Felix comes in and that instantly puts Gabriel Jesus under some sort of threat, where I feel like, as soon as Jesus is ready to go, Eddie will go back to the bench. Do you know what I mean? And so it gives us that security that we can continue the same level that we have, but it also ups the competition, which means that everybody has to lift their levels, which is fine. Something else that I think Gunner Blog mentioned, I think it was James McNicholas. It might have been somebody else, but I think it was him, that Joao Felix still maintains a communication with Thomas Partey. And if it were to come down to, preference, maybe United and Arsenal both come in with the same kind of numbers, figures, whatever, that having a relationship with somebody like Thomas, who is such a big part of what we're trying to do, could be the reason why he chooses Arsenal over them. Now, I get some people will say, but he plays with Bruno and he plays with so-and-so. You spend so much more time with the players that are at club level, and I think they give you a better indication. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if I played for it's like Joao Felix would be going from Simeone to Arteta, quite similarly to what Thomas Partey would. So he'd be able to give them a better vantage point, I think. Whereas Bruno Fernandes, and Dallo and stuff like that, they barely spend any time with each other. But I kind of get where people would say, well, they're Portuguese, so of course he would have a better connection with them. But I just feel like if it was me, I would want somebody who understood what I went through club-wise as well. So yeah. And again, Thomas Partey is such a big part of what we're doing. I mean, the funny thing, like just a sidebar as well, like when we talk about the most important players in our team, it still is Thomas Partey. Because without him, we lost a game. The only game that we lost this season was the game that he was not a part of. And I do think that we've managed okay without Jesus. And that's the only reason why I'm thinking like we have to keep that guy fit 100%. But that's another conversation for another day. Stuart McFarlane says, do you see ESR dropping into Xhaka's role if we bring in MUDRYK, or still fighting for a spot in the front of the line? We'll talk about MUDRYK in just a second and like where he fits in. But ESR, we spoke about this the other day. The way that the role is played and the way that Xhaka still drops into a double pivot and still does a lot of defensive work, I don't think Emile Smith-Rowe has that in his locker as of yet, and I'm not sure if he'll ever get it. And so I don't think ESR dropping into Xhaka's role is necessarily something that is imminent, although I do see it being something that maybe gets tried in the future. Let's see. NT says, we need a backup to Saka. Felix always plays on the left wing, but he can also play on the right wing. I do think that I get that aspect of things. It's like, well, how are we going to manage with nobody being really a direct backup to Bukayo Saka? But Joao Felix can play across the front line. Like if you watch his clips and you watch him play, he floats from one side to the other. And when I watched him play for Portugal in particular, this was at this World Cup, he was everywhere, And so like most of our players, I do think that he can operate on both sides, but yeah, there's not a direct backup for Bukayo Saka, and I can see why that would be kind of like concerning for people. Tope says, Arsenal is transitioning from backups to starters. Any signings now should be on the same level, if not better, than who he is competing with. This what makes City very competitive with no drop-off in quality. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's something that, and I don't think we'll have as much quality and depth as Manchester City because of what their ownership structure is and the amount of money that they do spend, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that Arsenal have 3 world-class, if not cusp of world-class players that can play up top. And then everything behind it is not of the same level of quality. And so we could do with one more, if that makes sense. And then the next person maybe could be an academy player or something like that. But we need at least one more. And it would be great if that person could play across the front 3, especially if you're going to be paying them 300 bags a week. Khalid says, Jess, if Kane gets a yellow versus Palace, he missed the NLD. Okay. I don't know. I just click on any old comment and that doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about now. But yeah, that would be great if he was absent. Let's see. Roman says, from this point on, I don't want to hear the word backup anymore, even with Saka. I hear that. Crispy Rice says, when Jesus gets back, he can play right wing interchangeable is the key. I agree. There's 130 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, get in the chat, and let me know what you guys are thinking. We just talked about Joao Felix, loan deal being discussed, Arsenal are interested in loaning Joao Felix, but the fee is astronomical and it would need to come down for anything to get done. But it is something that Arsenal are looking at, and it's been confirmed by David Ornstein. Whether or not it comes to fruition, you guys, I do not know. But personally, for me, I do think Joao Felix would fit Arsenal quite well. And I would love to see him at the Emirates. So you guys can let me know in the chat what you guys think about that. I don't know about the buy option. There's been kind of back and forth about whether or not it's an obligation or an option. But I think it would be okay if it was an option, but I can't see it being an option. I think it would be an obligation. So yeah. Yep, make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now, moving to the next conversation, MUDRYK. While I was making the thumbnail for this, more news about MUDRYK came through, and that was coming from a Ukrainian outlet. This is coming from Yehor Danielov, that is an editor at sportsarena.com, which is a Ukrainian outlet. The relevancy or reliability of this outlet, I do not know, but a lot of news seems to come through them. And he retweeted everything that everybody else said. I cannot read this. This is in Ukrainian. Hold on. He says that Arsenal have made an improved offer for MUDRYK. Now Shakhtar are considering whether to accept or continue negotiations. On January 10th, which is my birthday, Shakhtar's training camp begins, and the team will travel to Turkey. Even if MUDRYK gets into the Shakhtar team for this fee, it will not prevent the transfer. And so the most important thing that we wanted to see from this is that Arsenal have made an improved offer and Shakhtar are considering it. I think this same outlet was also saying that Shakhtar are not in any sort of rush and they'll wait and all this kind of stuff. But I do think that that's also positioning and posturing for Shakhtar to be we're not in any rush. So don't think you can just give us whatever and we'll just take it. Fabrizio Romano, of course, being the tap-in merchant that he is, said Arsenal have improved their proposal to sign mykhaylo MUDRYK, confirmed, as talks are on after our first bid was knocked back. It's up to Shakhtar. Chelsea also interested in the MUDRYK case. In case Arsenal's deal collapses, AFC remain the priority. And Ben Jacobs also was talking about this on the Football Terrace as well. Arsenal have now made a second bid. Told the total package remains under 70 million euros. AFC are optimistic a deal can get done, and for far less than the 100 million euro that Shakhtar are publicly quoting. Key to success is the structure. Shakhtar want around 55 million up front. So the 55 million up front is really interesting because that's pretty much what we offered for Rafinha. But I think the structure of that deal was quite we only want to pay a little bit up front. And so I do think that the Cronkies will have to pull their money out and make sure that they can pay a lot of that up front. Excuse me. And the rest of it will be add-ons. And so we'll see what they say. But, Shakhtar seemed to be really hell-bent on getting a big fee for him. And quite frankly, nobody from the Ukrainian league, no disrespect to them. I know they're going through a lot. But that league is not a top 5 league. And so anything above 60 million, would be ridiculous in terms of, even as talented as he is. So I don't think we should just pay anything, but we are going to have to maybe overspend just a bit for him because that's kind of the market. Everything is inflated, but I still feel like this is going to happen. I still feel like this is going to happen because he really wants the move. It seems like there's an idea that there's a compromise that can be done, and Arsenal usually start quite low, and the selling club always starts really high and then they meet somewhere in the middle. But you can't believe anything until it's done. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. Frank says, if Arsenal is paying more than 80 million for MUDRYK, let's just leave it and move on. Roman says, I want MUDRYK in before the Spurs game because I do have a feeling that we will have a short-term injury to our front line. Well, I hope your feeling is wrong. I don't have that feeling. I don't know. Why do you have that feeling? Do you usually get things right? Let me know because I don't like that feeling. But I hear what you're saying. We need some options in the attacking department because we just don't have it. Bendover says, put in a transfer request, MUDRYK. He needs to do Odom Wingy and just show up, and he needs to force a move, do an interview with Fabrizio Romano, do something, to bring that price right down and make it happen quicker. But Arteta needs this deal done quickly. He's already said that he wants players in quick. And it doesn't make sense. Like, it does make sense to have players, beyond, January. I get that. But the way our January is set up, we need somebody like now. And so, yeah, I think that Arsenal need to push this through. But also, if Arsenal did not feel a deal could be done, they wouldn't waste their time. And so that gives me some sort of like confidence that a deal can be done. Let's see. Roman says, I do not want to overspend for him because I do not want him to come under the same pressure that Pepe came under. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I understand that. And when you look at players that have come in for over 50 million over the last couple of seasons, they haven't done well. You can even just look at like Anthony. He doesn't look that amazing right now, maybe feeling a little bit of pressure. Jadon Sancho is on like a fucking retreat, getting psychological help because whatever's going on with him. Pepe didn't really work out. Jack Grealish is not really doing anything. Like, and I get that he got 2 assists the other day, but like nobody cares. As an overall thing, he has not maybe been worth 100 million. And so I do understand that aspect of things, that you don't want him to come under the same amount of pressure. I think what's so important is for the level of demand and pressure from an Arsenal perspective, for like when he comes in, to be mild and not crazy. Most of our players have come in and they've been under immediate stress because we've been desperate and we haven't had anybody. We've been buying under like emergency situations. So like if you look at Thomas Partey, he came in, we needed him like that. We needed him so desperately. And so I think he kind of struggled under the pressure initially. But look at like Fabio Vieira. He's been able to come in and kind of just like float in and do his thing. And like, of course, there's still some people that are like, oh, well, he's not working out, this and that. But he has the time and space to like get up to speed. And that's what we need from MUDRYK if he comes in, is from an Arsenal perspective, for him not to have to come straight in and play and make a huge difference, which he wouldn't have to. But then there'll be the outside pressure, and of course, like the first time he plays and he doesn't score a goal, or he misses a sitter or something, it'll be there. But that is kind of like the price you pay to come to a big club that's doing well. It's actually better to come into a team that's doing well, because then it is what it is. But he's still gonna have that pressure because it's Arsenal, and it just is what it is. You know what I mean? Let's see. NT says we don't have a player of MUDRYK's dynamism. We've spoken about this before, but I think just sheer pace, like, sometimes can be so distressing for defenses that they just make mistakes. And I do think, like, you've seen it with Son, you've seen it with Rashford. Those are the 2 examples that I can really think of in the Premier League. But the type of pace that they have, like, regardless if they the technical quality or not, they make defenses do the dumbest shit. Yellow cards, red cards, fouls in the box. And I think MUDRYK has that same quality, where it's just the pace frightens them so much. And so it'll make teams really have to think and make decisions, whether you let him go or you foul, you give up the red card, you give up the penalty, give up the free kick. And as fast as Martinelli is, which I think he is the fastest of our front line, I still feel like MUDRYK might be faster. You know what I mean? And so it would be nice to have somebody like that. I do think that he's raw and that he would need some adaptation. So he may not hit the ground running the way that some people would anticipate a player that's going to be going for this type of fee would. But remember Theo Walcott? Like, he didn't even have the same technical level as MUDRYK, but just the mistakes that defenses would make around Theo at his peak. We need that. And so, yeah, I agree. We don't have a player of his same dynamism. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Diallo says, put it this way, MUDRYK scares defenders way more than a Felix, even though the latter is probably more talented. I agree. Let's see. What else do you guys say? J Khan says also he holds his head up and looks for the best possible option while running with the ball. Cousin Earl says Martinelli has that to a degree, but I still think that there's I don't know. Because I don't have them doing like 100-meter sprints against each other, so I don't know. But when I watch MUDRYK play, and maybe it's because he plays in situations where there is a lot of space, but I just think he has frightening pace. And Martinelli does as well. He's really quick, but it feels different. I don't know why. Ivy says MUDRYK is quicker. I agree. Laska says, same with Martinelli against Brighton. Martinelli didn't even have the best game against Brighton. Like, truthfully, he hasn't been that great since he's come back, which is not like a dig. I love Martinelli, whatever. But I do think that there's a little bit of rust there, which is to be expected. He didn't play a lot for Brazil. And so, but look like just what his speed, like you guys are saying, did in both circumstances. I think Martinelli like has that frightening ability as well, and he's quite direct. And I think directness is such an underrated quality. People get so bogged down by wingers needing to have this skill level. I don't think they need that. I think they need to be direct and efficient and know how to scare defenses. And I think twirling around and doing step overs is one thing, but just if the ball is in an area of uncertainty and seeing somebody like that run towards you and knowing that you either need to dive in or let him go is so underrated. Subdude says, for the same 75 million, couldn't Arsenal acquire Zaha, instant impact, and savage steal? This is our chance to win the Premier League. I think I get that this is the chance for us to win the Premier League, but I also don't think MUDRYK necessarily would hinder us in any sort of way. Like, I don't think Zaha, because he's an instant impact, gives us more than what MUDRYK would, if that makes sense. I think what Arsenal want from the MUDRYK situation is they believe he could become a top player in the world. And so I don't think you give that up for short-term game, even though it's potentially a Premier League title. But I also think we could win the Premier League title by having MUDRYK. So it's about, can this player contribute something in the short term? Absolutely. But can he become something special in the future? Yes. And so that's why maybe you go for an Odegaard instead of a Maddison, because Odegaard's ceiling is way higher than Maddison's. Like, Maddison is 26, 27 now. He's as good as he's going to get. And Odegaard is just as good as him, if not better, but 3 years younger. And so I think that's what you have to look at in terms of this project is still in its infancy. Of course, we have an opportunity to win the Premier League, but this team is going to get into the Champions League. It's going to have the opportunity to win the Premier League again and win the Champions League. And so there's certain types of players that you just can't pass on. I think Odegaard is one of those, and I think MUDRYK could potentially be one of those as well, best in their position, whereas Zaha is never going to be best in his position, even though he would give you a couple of goals. In regards to Savage, I don't think Savage is ever really a true link for Arsenal. I think his agent just does it to try to get Juventus or somebody to come in for him. And so it is what it is. And Savage is 27 years old. I just don't see Arsenal going in for him. But in regards to MUDRYK, I just feel like it's a chance to really get somebody that could be best in the world. That's how Arsenal see him, you know? I think it's worth it. Let's see. A cow says, Jess, really, MUDRYK, do you believe with MUDRYK we can win titles? Well, if he came in January, I think we have a good chance of winning the title with him there. The thing about like this whole thing is like MUDRYK is good now, but what could he become under Arteta? Look at the type of development that has happened under Arteta, especially with our wingers. Arteta has done wonders with our wing talent. And we knew that that's coming in, that Arteta, that's what he was really good at. Helping Sterling, helping Sane, those types of players really hone their skills and go up a level. Look at how good Saka has become. Look how good Martinelli has become. You know what I mean? And so the idea that somebody with that level of talent, that MUDRYK, if he could get to Arteta and Arteta could help mold him, yeah, he could become best in his position, because Saka's damn near best in his position. You know what I mean? And he's been working with Arteta for like, what, 2 seasons? So yes, I do believe with MUDRYK we could win titles, because without him, we're on the cusp of it anyway. And this is like before our players even really hit their prime. So I don't know why MUDRYK would be some sort of like, oh no, we can't win titles with him. Like, have you seen the guy play? Like, he's absolute, and he's not a positional play, technical kind of robot. But Arteta doesn't make our attackers be robots like Pep does. You know, Pep doesn't know what to do with Grealish, but Arteta will allow a player like MUDRYK to be more free. And so I think he would really help us out to have something different. But I completely understand where some people are not bought in or don't really buy into it because of the league that he's coming from. But I think Arteta, what he's really good at is identifying talent. And it may not be totally noticeable now or obvious now, but look at what he's done with what we have so far. Crispy Rice says, of course it's possible, but negativity isn't going to help. Ify says, Arteta does really, really well with young players. I'm not worried about MUDRYK one bit. He will fit in well. O'Malley says, winning things aren't promised. You could build a good team and play. We aren't coaches nor scouts. Trust Arteta. Don One says, MUDRYK is a future Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, De Zerbi said it. I don't know what his credibility is in terms of, I mean, he did coach him, so he knows him quite well. But he's not the first. That's not the first person to say that. Like, I forget who wrote it, but one of the journalists I was writing about Arsenal's interest in MUDRYK specifically mentioned that Edu and Arteta are on the same page where they believe MUDRYK can become one of like the best in his position. And so, yeah, I think he would be worth it. It just depends on what the price is, because he's not worth 100 million. We know that. Not at the stage that he's at right now. Bendover says, look at where Arsenal got Martinelli from. Frey, the Viking, says, Joao Felix plus MUDRYK is good, but we still need some midfield cover for this year, don't we? I just fear that one injury to Partey and xhaka, and we are done. Yes, we will talk about that in a second too. Let's see. Don One says it was the guy from Hater News. So yeah, you guys have seen it as well. And the last piece of news that that I wanted to touch on before we get to the midfield conversation that I see some of you guys are dying to talk about, which is fine, is Ndika. So there's a couple of different outlets saying that Arsenal will sign Evan Ndika from Eintracht Frankfurt on a free at the end of the season. And Fabrizio Romano, I think, has come out and said, like, no, that's not true. But I do think that there's enough smoke. You know, there's no smoke without fire. Arsenal are interested in Evan Ndika, and several different outlets and several different journalists have said that. I think that this would be a masterstroke from Arsenal, is bringing in somebody that can bring in true competition for Gabriel, backfill that position that is totally like empty at the moment, and not have to like dip into funds for the summer, because I think Arsenal are going to look at bringing in a top midfielder in the summer, and you don't want to have to spend any of that money on a center back. Really, if you can bring in a quality one on a free. And I think this is the smart type of recruitment that Arsenal will look to do and will continue to do. So I don't know what you guys think about Ndika. You guys can let me know in the comments, but we were linked with him a while ago, and I thought he was quite good. It never came to fruition. I think he ended up going to Frankfurt instead. But now he's going to be on a free, and they're looking to tie him down, and they feel confident, or they feel like they can tie him down to a new deal. But I do think there's enough there where, Arsenal could potentially be really trying to push to get him in. And he can also play left back. I don't know to what capacity. I don't know what to a level, but a lot of people that swear by this guy say that he can play left back as well, which would be good because then you can move Tommy to the other side and then it opens up some more freedom. We could play in different ways and stuff like that. So I think that would be a master stroke from Arsenal if they could get that done for free would be great. So yeah, I'd be interested in that. You guys can let me know what you think. Yo-Yo says Arteta loves his CBs. He does. But at least we've also been attentive to other positions. I remember when we only bought center backs. And Pablo Marie is probably going to leave in the summer. So it's definitely a position that needs to be, because if Gabriel gets injured, we're finished. Yeah. So Leopold says, our summer transfers show that our scouts are doing a great job. I prefer MUDRYK over Zaha. I agree. Jeff Gold says, I'm all in on MUDRYK and anything else is a bonus. He is worth 100 million if he's as good as they say. A cow says, MUDRYK, any payment above 60 million euros would be a ripoff. Crispy Rice says, unpopular opinion, El Neni can come in for Partey with the first team and do a job good enough to win games. Interesting point. I know there'll be a lot of people that are like, what? You know what I mean? Diallo says, that Indika name is a bit cheeks. He will need to change his name ASAP. Fair enough. Nasongo says Ndika would be a terrific signing if we can get it done because he could easily cover for both Gabby and Partey. By the way, never seen him play midfield. I don't really know if I believe he could do that. But fair enough. Let's see. Jay Khan says, I'm feeling George Graham vibes with building a strong defense. It's one of our biggest assets. And I know things have changed a little bit just because we've went to another level this season by playing an even higher lane because we have Saliba now. So we are exposed a lot more, and we're seeing that our defenders make mistakes. But the longer they play this way, the better they'll become. And so our defense is one of our biggest assets. And it's one of the things that Arteta really worked on in the beginning, that a lot of people were like, why are we working on the defense? We need more attack. Now we see why. A lot of the principles as well that Arteta instilled early on in his tenure have maintained. So getting back into shape, being compact, those types of things that we were like, oh, who cares about that? We're not scoring enough goals, have been the reason why we're as good as what we are. And so I'm so glad that Arteta focused on that first, even though it wasn't pretty. Tony says Gabby was a home run signing, and Dika is probably at the same level as Gabby when we signed him, but then we can get him on a free no-brainer. Gabriel has went under the radar as one of our smartest signings. 25 million for a player of his level, a profile that's not very easy to find. For 25 million was definitely a steal. And so if Ndika is on a similar level, it'd be a no-brainer. I agree. So guys, let me know in the chat what you guys think about that. And last but not least, just so that we can go over it, because I know a lot of you guys want to talk about it, is the midfield. Because we haven't really seen many links to midfielders, and that's what makes me kind of believe that Arsenal are going to go big in the summer, but also feel that Sambi / El Neni is probably enough. If Thomas Partey were to get injured tomorrow, I think there would be a level of panic that we've never seen before from this fan base. And it would be, I think, justified considering the only game we've ever lost this season was when he wasn't here. And we know our win rate goes down significantly when he's not there. And there's nobody in the squad that can replicate to any sort of extent what Thomas Partey can do in this team. And so why are we not being linked with any midfielders? Why doesn't it look like we're going to bring any in? I do think Arteta and Edu trust El Neni enough to go throughout the season with him being the option. Now, do Arsenal fans feel comfortable with that? Absolutely not. But I guess my question to you guys would be, who would we bring in? And would you want to bring in somebody that maybe isn't a great option, but could fill the gap now and potentially lose out on the opportunity to bring in a really big signing? Like, do you not trust El Neni and Sambi so much that you'd be willing to maybe not get a world-class midfielder in the summer? That's my question. Wilson says, which midfielder should Arsenal sign in January? That's maybe up to discussion for you guys. That's a good question for you guys. I want to know who you guys would want to see Arsenal bring in. Personally, there's not a lot of options out there that inspire confidence that I think hit the ground running. And if Thomas Partey were to get injured, I feel like would be infinitely better than El Neni at this point. And I know that sounds like, how could you not be better than El Neni? But I think there's a lot of really average midfielders that people think are good. I just don't see it. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Frank says Sambi and El Neni is good and can stand a chance to hold on if anything happens. Partey was off and they were still here. We are today, so please, no doubts on them. Tony says, what does the lack of CM noise tell us? Patino closer than we thought. Rice, Sambi, El Neni not as bad as we think. That's what I think. I think Arsenal feel confident enough to allow, like, with the options that they have, being Sambi and El Neni in particular, they could withstand the rest of the title charge where they don't feel like we have enough attack. What I would say is that I think good attackers mask a multitude of sins. So it can paper over many a crack. If you can score goals and you have enough attacking threat, even if you don't have the best midfielders, you can kind of make it. Whereas if you don't have the attack, it doesn't matter what kind of midfield you got, especially because our midfielders are not necessarily, they score goals, but we know it's all about Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus. I don't think it matters if you don't have the attack, to be honest. If we run out of goals, we're fucked. Do you know what I mean? And so, excuse my language, but we are. And so I think that Arsenal are like, let's make sure we don't run out of goals and we'll deal with the midfield shit at another time, because El Neni can pass sideways and backwards for us. And because you have Zinchenko, you have somebody else that can dictate play from that midfield area. Whereas the season prior, we didn't have that. And so everything was going through Thomas Partey. Now, does that mean his role is not important? No, he's definitely important. I mean, he cleans up a lot of messes. He gets into the back line. He makes sure that he does the job almost perfectly to a T. But could Sambi and El Neni kind of get us through maybe a difficult period? Yes. But it does worry me just a little bit that the one game that we did lose coincided with Thomas Partey being injured. But we always lose at Old Trafford pretty much. You could say that I still think we could have won the game. And, like if we turned around with the exact same team, played it again, I do think we could have won that game even without him. But hey, it doesn't look good. If you look at it statistically, you're like, yeah, shit, if he's not there, we don't win, John says Rabiot seems to be the best player to back up or challenge Partey. Does he? Do you see him as a lone six in our system? Athletically, like, do you see it? I don't see it. And I think, quite frankly, his mom puts me off so badly that I'm like, I don't think you want that type of drama in your team. Would he want to sit behind Thomas Partey for a significant amount of time because Partey is the starter? I'm not sure if I think Rabiot seems like the best player, but we have been linked with him. But I still think it's more he's being offered to us, and they're using our interest to try to garner interest from somewhere else. Crispy Rice says nobody wants to sell their best DM in January. Yo-Yo says, I wouldn't want to see El Neni or Sambi start any of these league games through this month. Personally, if Partey was absent, I consider Ruben Neves as he. I'd consider a Ruben Neves because he's the right age. I don't know. I'm not high on Ruben Neves, but I hear what you're saying. Like, in this period where we are right now, where we basically have all the way up into the beginning of February, we need to be damn near perfect, because the opposition that we play Spurs away from home, we play Manchester United at home, we play Manchester City, I think, away, we play Newcastle. You won't want to see Elneny or Sambi coming in. You just won't, right? I think it's just the amount of injuries. I think if you have Jesus and Partey out, it becomes really difficult to see how we maintain. But one or the other, I think you'll be fine for a certain amount of time, if the rest of the team is performing well. New Dawn Game says, Declan Rice wants out of West Ham and would surely love a move to Arsenal given our current trajectory. Would make a great understudy to Partey. Excuse me. I don't know, you guys. Declan Rice, is he a 6? Is he a lone 6 in our system? Is it hype? Does he have the technical ability? Is he not definitely going to Chelsea? Like, I don't know. But I understand a lot of people want Rice. I'm just not sold on him. But then I think also, because Partey is such a unique profile and such a good player and plays at such a high level, that there's not going to be very many players out there that can do exactly what he does at the same level. And so you're going to have to almost concede that the next player that comes in to do that role will probably be different. But that doesn't mean that our levels will go down as a result of necessarily. Like, if you plop Declan Rice in this team, our best team, do we not win the games? I think we still win them. Potentially, but I don't know. It's just hard. It's hard for me to see him coming to Arsenal. I don't know. Let's see. Diallo says, it's not just about Partey. Even xhaka would be a massive blow if we lose him. However, we are not just a one-man team. Look, Eddie fits right in. Yeah, I mean, it's not a one-man team, and I do think xhaka as well. I just think so I think if Thomas Partey is still there and Vieira is in there, or Smith Rowe, we do lose quite a bit, especially away from home. So I do get what you're saying. Xhaka also would be a huge blow. I just don't worry about Xhaka being out as much because he's made of like stone and iron, and his bone density is like of somebody that we've never seen. Whereas sometimes it feels like Thomas Partey is made out of breadsticks. So I think that's why people don't talk about Xhaka as much, is because we don't anticipate that injury as much, even though you're 100% correct. Roman says, do you guys forget what happened in the Europa League and the League Cup? I do not believe in Sambi Elneny can stay for now until we get a top-class replacement. The issue with comparing what happened in the Europa League and the League Cup to what would happen in the league is that we know that players' levels dip when they play with the less good players. So when you play with a heavily rotated side and it's not the starters, like the feeling around Eddie before he played against West Ham till now is very much a symptom of like us feeling like he wasn't good enough because of what we saw early on when he was playing in the Europa League. And that was a heavily rotated side. You're playing with Marquinhos, Reece Nelson, Vieira, Sambi. No offense to these players, but they're just not the same. Holding, the levels just drop right down. You know what I mean? And so I do think if you have just Elneny standing in for Thomas Partey, you can be okay. If you have just Eddie standing in for Jesus, you'll be okay. It's a matter of like, and I think Elneny is significantly different than Sambi, by the way. I think if it's Elneny, at Old Trafford, we still win. But Sambi, he cannot play the lone 6 role. He just can't. You know what I mean? And so I think, of course, we need a top class option as well to bring in. But I think, of course, in the Europa League and in the League Cup, when you have a heavily rotated side, the levels just go right down. But I don't think you can just say that because I saw that, they can't play with us at all, if that makes sense. Frank says, Odegaard can also stand for Partey while Fabio plays his position. The midfield ain't that bad to me. Well, I don't know about all that. I don't want Odegaard playing the 6th role. I don't know if you saw what Thomas Partey was doing, but those tackles, Odegaard's not doing them. And what Odegaard's really good at doing is his front foot pressing and being Odegaard. But I don't think he can do Thomas Partey's role. I don't think he can drop into the back two and become like a third center back. So I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I don't think Xhaka can do it either at the level of Thomas Partey. We just don't have anybody in the squad that can do it. You know, and it's a worry. But I think it's also a worry and a risk that Arsenal are willing to take. I don't think a midfielder is coming in. And we just have to hope. But that's also a big part of challenging for the title, is that you have to have a bit of luck. And I think Thomas Partey remaining injury-free is a big thing that we have to hope for. There's about 206 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Crispy Rice says, I think Vieira can play the xhaka position. I think he can at home when we're heavily ball dominant. Like against Brighton the other day, he would have gotten eaten up because we conceded so much of the possession that he would not have been able to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Or if you're playing away from home at Newcastle or something like that, where it's really physical and he's going to have to drop into the back line or drop into a double pivot with Thomas Partey and get the job done. But when we're playing at home and we're heavily ball dominant, of course he can do it. Because he did it before. I think he did it against Wolves. So yeah. Mark says Ben White would be okay in a pinch taking over Thomas Partey. Maybe. I don't like the idea of center backs playing in midfield because I think they look like center backs playing in midfield, if that makes sense. But I mean, it's an idea. Yo-Yo says, I don't want to see Vieira start any of this month's league games. Fair enough. And let's see what else are you guys saying. Caleb says, I think it makes sense to gamble on Partey's fitness and go for two forwards. MUDRYK and Felix goals win you games, and we desperately need additional firepower up front. We can manage without any. I kind of feel that same way. And although it's not pretty and it's not exactly what we want, the reality is, you guys, is we're not going to have our best 11 every single game. And it's rare that a team does. And we just have to get over it and just hope that the team performs like they have been. So, yeah. We are about in an hour, and that's all I had time for today. Unfortunately, we can't go any longer, but I really enjoyed chit-chatting with you guys. Obviously, we'll do something after the Newcastle match. We'll do more of like a post-match of both games and where we are and stuff like that. This was just more of like a transfer update, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you guys are following me on Instagram as well. On Instagram, it's I'm Jessica Black. And on TikTok, it's also I'm Jessica Black. There's more content on there as well, just in case you guys are like, oh, you know, she didn't go live today. I'd probably put something up on TikTok or Instagram. So make sure you guys follow me there and like this video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.